the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing? I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. If you live in New York City, you know what a mess our trains and subways have become. Unfortunately, cities across the country are suffering from broken down infrastructures and political wrangling over how to fix them, how to do upgrades and maintenance, how to pay for it. And it's why we begin this show with an upbeat story about the Long Island Railroad. It's where Tony Signals, I doubt it's his real name, but it's where he did maintenance work on Herald Avenue in Long Island City, New York, where the Northeast Corridor came through his interlocking. His book is a nostalgic look at why America loves trains. It's entitled, The Adventure Begins on a Magic Carpet Woven of Steel. But first, I got to ask you, what's with the name Tony Signals?
It was the Amtrak signal desk that gave me the nickname because there were so many Tonys on the railroad. We all got nicknames.
So you were Tony Signals?
Uh-huh. I got a stack.
A stack of what, short stories?
Yeah, mostly for children. I would ride to work every day to get to Harold, and you would see myriads of kids every day with their parents going into the city to see Broadway shows and Christmas and just Manhattan in general. And I would always be in the lead car. I just watched what went on. And I said, there's a story to be told here. And I told the story, and the story cuts through all the delays and commuters and all this other stuff. This is looking through the eyes of a family with young kids. They get onto the train, and their ride on that train is this story. First off, you get in, and the youngest one moans that he can't see out the front bulkhead door. The father and the two boys are in the lead car at the front of the train. Mom and sis are a couple of rows back. Of course, now the boys are all excited because the engineer's cab, his door is cracked open by his ventilation latch. So they can peek in there too and see what's going on. And they're looking and they're pointing and they're just being kids. There is a loud buzz coming from the conductor because he has closed the doors. Next thing you know, they're all going back into their dad's arms because the brakes are released and the throttle's been pulled out. And you know how it is. You can't stand still, and they all land in dad's lap. So now here they go. They're going down the track. They're doing 80 miles an hour, and they're being approached at a crossing where there's going to be an oncoming diesel train on the second track. The horn sounds unbelievable because they did not expect the horn to sound. Now, here comes a locomotive in the opposite direction. It scares Mom and Sis, who are sitting a couple of seats back. Mom gets startled. Sis gets scared. She poor thing, she starts to cry. The youngest boy, with the rock and sway of the car, manages to get back to them. He says to Mom and Sis, he says, that engineer in the locomotive, he waved to me. Well, Mom is so relieved. Sis now is so happy that they all want to go and ride in the front.
Okay, so this is an ordinary, everyday family's trip into New York City and the things that they see along the way and the things that they learn about the train along the way.
Look at this as just a story of the good old USA American family who got on a train, who knows nothing about delays and this and that and everything else. They're just along for the ride. It's their means to get to where they want to go, which is the circus.
Yeah, and it's a fun time, and it's a happy time, and trains are really an amazing thing, and it's a wonderful way to travel. You don't have to worry about, you don't have to pay attention to traffic lights or people. You can just get on the train and hang out with your family and watch all the bridges and going under 7 stories, under the East River. But you know what? The wonderment's been kind of taken out of it because all we hear about now are delays and signal problems and crumbling infrastructure and tracks that are destroyed. And
now let me interrupt you there. It irks me every time you hear on the news, they put the blame towards signal problems. The signal has detected the problem. The signal is a keeper of the public trust. Let's say you are the engineer. You have a red signal. What do you do?
You stop. So
the signal now turns green.
Yeah.
What do? You go. But how do you know that green is not lying to you? That's the signal maintainer's job. There are tests and routines that are done daily, weekly, monthly, bi-monthly, yearly. And who's standing over your shoulder watching you is the Federal Railroad Administration and the National Transportation Safety Board, because the signal maintainer is truly the guardian of the way. No matter how bad things get, the signal system is always up to snuff.
Good to know, Tony, and it's nice to have a positive story about trains. And I'm looking forward to your story about how Sis eventually becomes an engineer. As a corporate attorney, Will Adams wrote thousands of contracts. He was also a writing instructor, a teacher, a dad, and now a writer. Once he retired, he found time to finish a manuscript he started in the 80s as part of his quest to follow Plato's philosophy that the unexamined life wasn't worth living. The name of his book, Spiral Mirror.
And so I took that to heart, but I had also been struggling to complete my PhD in philosophy, and so I was stuck with this unreconciled balance in my life, two threads that I couldn't put together. And so I had the inspiration to create a novel where the chief protagonists were the male figure, a middle-aged professor of philosophy, and his female counterpart, a rising star as a trial lawyer. And I thought that the interaction between those two and an adventure with developing their love relationship, but also reflecting upon what they were doing through their interaction would help me reconcile these two threads and bring them together. But I think what actually triggered the event was the eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980, which I witnessed. And, one of the enduring images was this automobile kind of buried in the ash. The person in it didn't survive. And that image is what, triggered one of the main aspects of the novel. Carl, the professor, had an encounter with this young woman at one of the faculty events. She was the daughter of a professor, and they struck up a relationship with the plan of going up together into Seattle, and they encounter a young woman who they pick up as a hitchhiker. She says she has to find her family, but they're chased by these other people, so they're being driven, if you wish, to, in effect, Mount St. Helens. Then the eruption takes place, and he gets thrown to what he believes to be the future. And people from the future have said they brought him there because of what had happened in the future. So he was thrown like 40 years into the future, but he's disembodied. So he has these very unique powers that they wanted to use to enable them to preserve civilization and protect themselves and the spiral mirror from destruction by outside forces who wanted to take over. There are no bad people. They're just desperate.
Right.
So anyway, he's disembodied, so he can enter into minds of others. He confronts this issue of having, in effect, absolute power. And if you have absolute power, there's a certain compulsion to use it.
Right.
And the question is on whose behalf. In the course of that adventure, he encounters Laura as an old woman, and they had a daughter. She knew she was pregnant when they started the trip. And the hitchhiker they picked up, who was in effect manipulating the entire event, also reappears. And it's the interaction between these four characters that explores the various aspects of love and loyalty. As it turns out, it was all a ruse. The people of the future were actually aliens manipulating and experimenting on people such as him to pass judgment on people of the earth. So they're thrust back into the present and have to relive it, so that in effect, she reveals to him that she's pregnant twice. So anyway, and they go back to Mount St. Helens because they realize that this mountain is going to blow. And so they try to save people.
Right.
And then they go back to the mountain and it blows again. And that's, in effect, the first half of the tale. What I want to do is encourage young people to reflect, the unexamined life is not worth living. That's my motto.
Well, this book is certainly a piece of your life worth examining. What an imagination, Will. Thank you. Right out of the horse's mouth comes Horse Apples Volume 2. Chip O'Brien is a California cowboy writing back to our show with a continuation of Horse Apples Volume 1. Welcome back, Chip.
It's about 154 pages.
Of fun.
What is it about? It's about being a cowboy out here in the West. There are poems and stories. By the way, cowboys don't read poetry.
What do they do?
They recite it.
Oh, okay.
And I have been reciting poetry since I was a kid,
Okay.
and mostly other works. So I decided in my late 50s and early 60s to start writing down what I had heard and what I had seen and what I know to be true, and came up with a book full of poems and stories about cowboys and living out here in the West. Anyway, I was inspired by other cowboys that I knew, and they encouraged me because we'd sit around campfires and brandons and whatnot that cowboys do out here. And I always had a funny story to cheer them up, or a funny poem to cheer them up. And I got encouraged by them to write them down.
Give me one.
Oh, okay. I call it Horse Apples, named after the book. I know a pile of horse apples by sight, by aroma, and touch. Calling manure by some other name don't change what it is by much. But how many folks can recognize horse apples just by the sound? It doesn't always make the same noise as when it falls upon the ground. I'll give you some examples of horse apples I have heard, and you'll understand my meaning, horse apples that sound like words. Send me your hard-earned money, and I'll talk to God for you. My church is your salvation. It's the only church that's true. Shop at my used car emporium. I'll preform with my dog Spot. These prices won't last forever, and my cars are really hot. I promise to reduce your taxation by at least 40 or 50%. Vote for me and put me in office, and I promise good government. Our product is new and improved. Why, it's better than before. It'll make your life a sunny day, available at any quality store. I sense these horse apples all over till I'm completely sick and tired. So I call this work Horse Apples because it's honestly inspired.
All right, so let me ask you this. You've written Horse Apples 2, you've written Outhouse Reader, which sounds fascinating. That sounds fascinating, yes. Horse Apples 1.
Downwind to Cows.
So my question to you is, do people know that you're a writer?
Well, locally here, yes. I've sold well over 6,000 copies of my other books.
That's great.
Mostly it was out of the back of my truck, or I would go to rodeos all over Northern California.
Yeah.
And a couple even in Southern California, and one in Nevada. And I'd park my truck outside there, and I had a little banner that said Chip O'Brien, Cowboy Poet. And folks would come right up to me in the parking lots, and I would sell them right out of my truck and autograph them for them. I did have one lady, as a matter of fact, that wanted to take a verse of my poetry and put it on her husband's tombstone. That amazed me. And I said, absolutely. I'm sorry you lost your husband, but if you wish to make my words that important, I'm very happy about it.
Oh, I bet you're great at this. So you're a real self-promoter.
I guess you could call me that, but I found that it's more fun to listen to people than it is to talk to them.
Now that's the way to promote your book, Chip. Sit in the back of a truck and just talk to people. Something to chew on while we take a very short break. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books. And unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them. And they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything: copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.
We're back on the Page Publishing Book Club. I am your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Gerald Libby remembers when there wasn't TV or social media, only his dad telling stories for entertainment. He's been writing all of his life, and now he's published a collection of short stories for his 8 children to appreciate. It is entitled Images of Yesterday.
So I wrote this book because, I wanted to share my experiences with other people and share the things that from my imagination. Let me see. We could go to never fish on a Sunday. On Sundays, you should never go fishing. Sundays are made for the day of the Lord. They say because Sundays is the day of the Lord, and if you go fishing on a Sunday, that means they feel as though, so you're not going to church to worship God, you're going fishing and you mess around and go fishing and catch the devil.
Oh.
You see, you get what I'm saying? Like, in other words, you running around doing things you ain't got no business when you should be somewhere, dealing with whatever religion that you are from,
Right. Okay.
And you mess around and catch trouble instead of something good for you,
Okay, so don't fish on Sundays. So more like that.
Yeah. So it's like each short story, they have morals to them, some things you just have to look in and you have to analyze them. But I do that because I want you to use your imagination. The imagination builds futures, and like today, I think like a lot of things make it easy for people to be lazy, and a lot of things make they build your imagination for them because they already give it to you in a visual, you see, and that's why I love to write, and I love when people read because what reading does is it's exercise for your mind and helps you build your imagination. If we didn't have imagination, from the imagination spurns blueprints of buildings. From imagination spurns portraits of the Mona Lisa. Even though it's big, but from the imagination, it was a person's imagination that started it.
Right.
They imagined it,
So do people know you've written this book?
Since the book's come out, I've been busy locally with a lot of people asked me to sign that book, but nowhere as far as in the bookstores yet. I haven't made it that far yet.
All right.
I'm going.
Are you going to keep writing?
Oh, of course. Of course, I love to write. I mean, I have a lot of poetry. I write poetry, short stories and books. And right now, like, I'm putting together another book. I've loved to write. I love to write. I mean, ever since I was a kid, man, all I did was read. My father, he was very hard on education, him and my mother. So, like I said, I just love to write, man. I read all day, and I take everything that I've been through, or when I read, and I take all that and I put it together, and I just sit back. And I'm 70 years old. That's all I can do.
Good for you, Gerald. Thank you. Our next author, Janice Owens, had an unusual inspiration for her first book. It's entitled Gilbert and Max. Now, Janice, it's all about the ink.
I ordered ink from Dale, and I did not get my first order, so I reordered, and I got the second one, and then the next day I got the first one. So I tried to get in touch with Dale to know what to do with the ink, and I never got a response. So I kept it, and I just thought, well, I'll write a children's book, because they're short and sweet. Well, it didn't turn out to be a children's book.
Because you had ink?
Yeah, because I had ink. I didn't know what to end up doing with all the ink.
But it's not a children's book.
No, it's a romance novel. It's going to be in a series of 3. It was really no inspiration in the book. It was just, as I was writing it, that's how it came out.
In your blurb, it says here that you're telling a story as it was told to you.
He has 2 goddaughters, and the goddaughters is telling the story of how it was told to them. As the series goes on, you will understand it that way.
So Patty and John got together because of...
Gilbert and Max. Gilbert is a cat and Max is a dog.
And so these two animals brought these two people together.
Yes, it is. The first book is how they meet and get together and start falling in love. And the second book will be their wedding. They've got to finish his mansion. He's filthy rich. And she's just like an ordinary widow woman, you know.
Her husband passed away.
Yes. Before he moved into this ordinary neighborhood, you know, just to be out of his condo, he moved into this ordinary neighborhood, and he was a few houses away from her. When he moved in there, it was right after her husband had passed away, I think a year before. And he moved in, and it was like 4 years later before they really got together.
And it was a storm that got them together.
Yes, because he would go for walks with Max of a morning. Well, when the storm hit, he had to run back, you know, to his house to end up with Max to get out of the rain and stuff. This was the first time that she let Gilbert into the house. He was normally an outside cat. Well, Gilbert got up in the window and was watching all of this and was meowing. So she come to see what was going on. So, like I said, the second one is they've got to finish his mansion because they want to get married in the mansion.
And then their love story continues over the next two books.
That's right. The first time that they really started talking was both of them went to the grocery store and met there, and because they were buying different food for their animals. And he told her that Max was sick because of the thunderstorm and everything. And that's when they really started talking. And he helped her out one time to put up decorations for Thanksgiving because she always decorated and everything. And then they started going out together. And the last of the book is when he proposed to her.
Are you getting any attention on this?
The ones that Walmart does, and some, at my doctor's office, they do. And at the vet's office, I gave out books. And when I gave out the books, I ended up signing them and everything. And the ones that's working with me, they're telling other people. And some of the customers there at Walmart, I've told them, and they're going to end up ordering books. So a lot of it's just the word of mouth, and I'm trying to get the ones that I gave out to tell people about them, you know, to tell people about the book.
Good enough, Janice. Thank you. Finally, Mary Brooks has writings going back to 1969, but she was inspired by a little girl to finally write her first book about some unlikely friends. The name of her book, Nat and Pat.
I have an 8-year-old whom I have had since she was 5 months old. And when I first got her, I thought it would be so nice to be able to teach a really young child to read. And I started teaching her to read when she was about 2.5 to 3 years old. And I wrote a very simple little book and just put it together at home. So I thought, well, this would be a good idea to publish a book for young readers, and starting as early as probably 2.5. And Nat and Pat is a book about a cat and a rat. They're unusual friends. The name of the book is Nat and Pat, Unusual Friends. And they are so different because, like I say, it's a cat and a rat. But they are best of friends, and it was basically set up to teach children to read simple words. So I used all of the words that have just the at the bottom, at the ending, like cat, rat, net, pat, mat, sat, hat. And that was one of the basic reasons that I used that format, because once a child learns really simple words, they graduate from that. And also the book was not only that, it was meant to be a poem. It is a poem. It is also easy to remember. Also, it teaches children how to associate words that look so much alike. And it was showing by just changing one letter and learning phonics, you could soon learn to read. And I mean, this could be something I thought about even doing on a gradual scale, elevating it up to where it would be for older children, using synonyms and homonyms and things of that nature.
Are you a teacher?
No, I'm not. I worked 30 years as an underwriter.
You seem to have a pretty good command of the English language.
Well, I love English, and it's just something that I just aspire to do on my own. I do a lot of research. I read a lot, and I have a lot of grandchildren. As a matter of fact, I have about 16 grandchildren. I have probably 16 great grandchildren and one great great grandchild.
And one you're raising?
No, the one I'm raising is a great grandchild, but I do have one great great.
My goodness.
I've had children around me all my life. It would be a great book for a pre-K classes.
Right.
And where my grandbaby goes to school, I did introduce it to one of the teachers there. But I'm sure they have certain ways in which books are accepted, for schools and things of that nature. But I think it would be a great teaching tool for pre-K children. And also, I have a brother that lives in Delaware, and he was looking into promoting the book there for me.
Great. That's a great start.
Yes, it is. And I also have a lot of relatives in different areas of the country. They're scattered out everywhere. I'm the only one in Texas. My whole family practically lives in Delaware.
Oh, geez.
And I have a family in New York, Virginia, South Carolina, all around.
Jeez, Mary, sounds like you should go on tour. You'd never have to pay for a hotel. I mean, look at it that way. Hey, and you never have to pay for all the free advice and ideas you get right here on the Page Publishing Book Club every single week. Am I right? I'm right. Really appreciate you tuning in. And if you missed anything, you can always download the podcast at 710WOR.com. If you have any comments or suggestions, or you just want to drop us a line, email us at contact@pagepublishing.com. In the meantime, it's a new year. Get that book off your bucket list. And, you could wind up as a guest right here on the Page Publishing Book Club. Yes, it could happen to you. Something to think about. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini.